Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, I'm creating a French Country Fairytale book. For my project today, I'm going to be using this hardcover book that I thrifted. I try to get books that are at least 350 to 400 pages long for this kind of craft. I'm going to open it up to the middle and then I'm going to be using my Sealy's Quickset wood glue. I'm going to pour some of that out into a plastic container and then I'm going to start watering it down. I've done a lot of these altered books, but I thought I would quickly run through the process with you guys again, just in case you haven't seen my other ones. I'm applying the watered down mixture with an old chip brush. Definitely don't use your good brushes for this. I'm just going to get a really nice coat over the top of the entire book, the pages that are open there, the edges of the pages, and the top and bottom sections of the pages. I'm then going to apply the wood glue directly to the page surface as well on all of the edges. Ultimately here, what I'm trying to do is to get the book to stay open in this format, to make it look like it's been open for years and worn and open to one particular section of the book for a very long time. I'm then going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to start adding some strips of hot glue, and I'm going to start gluing down the book pages in sections. These are almost completely dry, so a lot of them are stuck together, so I'm able to sort of stagger where the pages sit and have them sort of on an angle. Again, I want this to look like a book that's been open to this section for quite some time. I want to have a nice curve to my pages as well. I'm going to continue to stagger those pages on that side, and I will do it on the left as well, and then I'm going to add one more coat of that wood glue on the edges of my pages just to help everything stay in place. I then added a bit more of my watered down glue mixture to the corner of my book page there. I've got a few pages that are stuck together there, and I'm just going to curl that over the top of my pencil there, apply a bit more product, and this is just going to give us some of those curled up page edges, again to add to that worn effect. And I'm going to be repeating the same process on both sides, up the top and down the bottom. You can also add even more curls. You can add the curls underneath it, so you've got quite a few there, but I just chose to keep this pretty simple. To help hold those pieces in place, I added a little bit more of that hot glue underneath the curled up book pages. I'm going to be using this beautiful artwork from Roycycled Spring Elements paper. I'm just measuring the inside design there with that beautiful castle, and I'm going to be marking out the measurements on the right hand side of the page. And I'm just going to be marking the top and bottom, the center, and obviously the sides. And then I'm going to be sketching out a rough oval because we are actually going to be cutting out some of the pages in the center there to create an indent sort of a look. I know some people tend to get upset when I cut or paint over books, but I view this as giving it new life. So I'm just going to continue cutting out those oval shapes, and I'm trying my best to keep it around the same size because we're going to be putting that beautiful Roycycled paper in the center there. And as I said, I want it to be indented to give it a bit more of like a 3D look, almost like we are looking through a window or being sort of shown a scene from the book. I just really love this look. I've never done it before, so I wanted to try it. I ended up cutting down about 3/4 down into it, and I did this after I had glued the book the way that I want. Otherwise, the pages would have set a bit staggered if I had have done it before then. So it's best to do this step after you've got your book looking the way you want. I then went in with my craft knife and I'm going to cut out that center design that we're going to be using from the Roycycled paper, and I'm going to set that off to one side. I'm then going to be adding some more of my Sealy's Quickset wood glue on the inside of the book. This is just going to make sure that all those pages are glued together and give that section some stability. When my book was dry, I came in with Paint Couture's Simply White chalk paint, and I'm going to be applying 3 even coats. I needed the 3 to cover up the text. You could probably use a primer instead and save yourself a couple of coats of your white paint, but this was just the easiest option. I'm going to be painting the entire book in this lovely white, and I honestly just love starting off with a blank canvas. It definitely helps with getting those ideas going. After my paint had dried completely, I took out Paint Couture's Decoupage Medium in Matte, and I'm going to apply a nice even coat to the center section. I'm then going to press the decoupage design into the center there, and I will have a little bit of the paper creeping up the sides, but I did add a bit of extra product along the sides to make sure that everything would be stuck down. So I'm just gently running my fingers over the top of the paper to make sure everything is adhered down, and then I'm going to take out my brush and apply another coat of that decoupage medium over the top. This is going to seal everything in. I then took out my LeBlanc Baroque frames and pendants mold. I'm dusting it with cornstarch, and then I'm going to work my Das air dry clay into that design. I've sort of rolled the clay up, and now I'm winding that clay around, pressing the clay down into all of the details as I go, and I'm then going to be using my fingers to push that excess clay out. This particular mold does have a thick rim around the outside, which definitely helps to get that clay out a bit easier. I'm then going to start flexing the mold to help that clay release from the sides, and then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to flip it over and gently start pulling that design out. Gravity definitely does help here, but you can see if I have any areas that aren't coming out, I just sort of gently pull those out. Before gluing this on, I'm going to position it over the opening there, and I know right away that I'm going to have to stretch and alter the frame a little bit, which is fine. You can do that with clay, so I'm just going to gently start pulling at the frame to stretch it a little bit to get it to how I want it to look. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to flip it over and add some more of my wood glue to the back. I'm adding a generous amount there. This is quite a big clay piece. I want to make sure it gets stuck down well. And then I'm going to use my fingers to spread that glue out so that every surface has that adhesive. And then I'm going to flip it over and position it where I want it to go. Now this is not going to sit perfectly straight because obviously our book pages are curved, but I just want it to be mostly straight and centered the best I can. I then took out IOD's Classic Elements mold, and I'm going to be working my air dry clay into the beaded trim design on the right hand side there. I've pushed out the excess, then I'm going to gently pull the clay out. I'm then going to add some of my wood glue to the back of that, and I'm going to be positioning this on the inside of that frame. We've got quite a thick indent there, so I want to add another detail there. So I'm just going to add that beaded trim. I've cast a couple of those so that I can continue that design around the inside of that frame. Once I had that stuck in place, I then went in and applied some pressure to sort of squish the molds down and make them a little bit wider. They actually reminded me of old castle bricks or thick bricks, so I felt like that tied in really well. And then I added some more extra clay on the inside of the frame just to fill in any other gaps. I used the end of my pencil to help smooth it out. I'm then going to be doing a partial casting of this design here, and I've dusted that with cornstarch, and I'm going to start working my clay in. I don't want the sort of shell design that's part of this, but I do really love the scrolls that are involved with this piece. So I've just done a partial casting, I'm pushing out the excess, and then I'm going to flex that mold and pull it out. I'm then going to be taking my palette knife and cutting off that extra design up the top there. I'm envisioning this going in the top left and right hand corners. I then took out my Madame Garland mold by Redesign, and I'm going to dust a couple of designs with cornstarch there and then work my clay in. These are very delicate designs, so if you have trouble getting the excess clay out or a nice clean line, you can also use a plastic card or plastic spatula to run along the back of it. I'm then going to flex the mold there and then flip it over to get my piece out. I removed the corner piece to start off with there just so I could see how it would look with both of those garlands there draping across the top. And then I decided to further alter that casting from the Classic Elements mold, and you can see I'm just going to layer the Redesign mold over the top of that altered design. I'm then going to dust another part of the Madame Garland mold by Redesign, and I'm pushing that excess clay out and then again flipping it over to help me get it out. This one is quite tricky with that delicate bow, and then I'm going to be positioning that one up the top there. I then dusted another section of the Madame Garland mould, and I'm going to work my clay into that pattern there. I'm going to be casting both of those, and they are going to be going on the left and right hand side of the book. I then decided to do another partial casting, so always keep in mind you can just use bits and pieces of your molds, and I'm going to be just using some roses and a fleur-de-lis, and then I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to be adding these in the corners, the left and right, and then I'm going to glue everything down with my Sealy's Quickset wood glue. My vision for this project was that it was a sort of fairy tale piece. We're looking at a beautiful castle. We've got all of these ornate molds. So I was definitely going for that feeling as I was creating this book design. I let my castings dry overnight, and the next day I came in with that same Simply White chalk paint that we already have down, but I want to go over the top of all of my castings so that everything is that one color, that one base, so that I can then build upon it. I did also then switch to a dabbing and stippling motion when applying my paint to reduce the look of brush strokes. When the paint was dry, I took out my Redesign Vintage Script stamp. This is one of the designs in that pack, and I'm using IOD Permanent Black ink. I'm then going to flip that over, and I'm going to position that on the left-hand side of the page. So this could be some of the writing from the book, maybe it's a journal entry. I just wanted some sort of beautiful text on my project. I then went in with a wet wipe and I pulled back some of that ink so that it had a more faded and worn look. I'm not sure if you can do this with all inks, but I definitely have success doing it with IOD ink. I then took out Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze, and I'm going to be applying that over the entire book. Sometimes I like to do this as one of my first steps so that I'm really highlighting all of the castings that we've added, and I'm creating the sort of lower points, the shadows that I can then layer on top of. Glaze can be used for that, but it can also be used to tone your paint. I do use it a little bit later as well. It's definitely quite a versatile product, and honestly it really also helped me sort of move forward with my project. So I'm just going to continue adding that, and then you can see that I do come in with a wet wipe and I pull it back, and I like to wipe but also dab back the product. I find this gives it a bit more of a naturally worn look. So I'm just going to continue to add that glaze over the entire project, even the inside section of the decoupage paper as well, but very, very light in that section. You can see that I'm also adding it to the book pages. I'll also be adding it to the bottom section of the book as well. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. When the glaze was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Ballet Slipper Luxe Metallic Paint, and I'm going to be applying that to all of the sections that have those lovely roses, and I'm just dabbing that on. I don't need full coverage here, but I just love the pop of shine and color that this brings. I'm also going to be adding this to the little bows as well. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic, and I'm going to be applying that over the top of that beautiful frame design that we've added. I'm not going for full coverage here. I'm happy for it to look worn. I'm going to be doing a bunch of layering with this, so this isn't the final look. I just want to get some of that beautiful bronze on there. Again, it's going to help me with what direction I go with when I'm working on a project. This is definitely a project that evolved as I was working on it. I didn't really go in with a clear picture of how I wanted it to end up in the end. I just knew I wanted a fairy tale sort of theme and to use Roycycled's beautiful papers. I am also adding some of that bronze to the bottom sections as you saw, and these little medallions. I then took out IOD's English Toile Transfer. This is one of my favorite pieces, and I'm going to be positioning this sweet little girl in the bottom left left-hand corner. I'm just creasing the area where I'm going to need to cut with my scissors so that it fits in that bottom corner. I'm cutting that out, and then I'm going to peel the backing off, position it in place, and then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to use my transfer stick to rub that design down. I'm then going to pick up the plastic carrier sheet section there and pull that as I'm rubbing until I have all of that down. I then repositioned the little picnic basket that was originally to her left. I am repositioning that and adding that to the right down the bottom there. And I did also layer in a little bit of grass as well, just to soften the sort of transition. I'm then going to cut out this sweet little sheep design there, and I am envisioning that going on the right hand side. So I've peeled the backing off, and then I'm going to begin by rubbing it with just my fingernail to start off with, and then I'm going to switch to the transfer stick. And I want this sweet little lamb in the bottom right hand corner to look like it's almost climbing up the side of the book there. And I do layer in a bit of grass there as well. Ultimately, I felt like these could be characters from the fairy tale story. There's also cute little sheep in that decoupage paper, so I felt like that tied in well. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Sky Blue Luxe Metallic Paint, and I'm going to be adding that just to the background section of that little medallion or crest design that we added. When that was dry, I took the Bronze Luxe Metallic out again, and I'm going to be applying that to the rest of the details on this piece. You can also see that I have got some of that ballet slipper on the two pink roses that are part of that design as well. At this point, when the paint was dry, I decided to come in and do a little bit of dry brushing with that Simply White paint. I wanted to lighten everything up a little bit. I was a little bit stuck at this point, a little bit unsure of exactly where I was going with this, so I decided to bring in some different tones, add a little bit of lightness, and see how I liked the look of that. When that was dry, I decided to take out Paint Couture's Crackle Step 1, and I'm going to be dabbing that on to all of the empty book space pages that don't have the castings on it. So I'm just going to be adding this to create that sense of age, to give it another sort of layered element in there. This is obviously going to be an optional step. I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be adding crackle because obviously I had the glaze down already, but in the end I decided that it definitely fit in well with the aged effect that I was going for with this project, and I always do love to add a bit of crackle if I can. It's one of my favorite things to add. I let that dry completely, and then once it had been drying for about an hour, it felt sticky to the touch, so I came in with Crackle Step 2, and I'm just going to be applying it in exactly the same way that I applied Step 1. This mixture is a little bit thicker, so you do have to be mindful of that. Make sure you don't pull back any of that Step 1. I let Step 2 dry for about an hour, and then I came in with Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Glaze again, and I'm going to go over the top of the crackle. So I know this is going to darken the piece up a little bit more, but I really do want to highlight the beautiful crackle that we have been able to achieve, and I will be pulling back quite a bit of it, so it's not going to be super dark, but again, we're going for a vintage feel. So if this is not to your taste, you don't like that vintage sort of worn grungy sort of a look, then obviously this is a step you could leave out, and you could possibly use IOD's Vintage Textures stamp instead to get the crackle effect without having to use the glaze. When the glaze was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Sheer Bliss Luxe Metallic Paint. This is a sheer metallic, and I'm going to apply that to the center section. It'll give it a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of magic. I'm going to pull back a little bit of that intensity, and then I'm also going to be adding it to that pendant design, and I'm going to dab it over the top of the English 12 transfer pieces that we added down the bottom. Again, just for a little bit of shine, give it a little touch of magic. I then decided to add in a bit more of that bronze, so you're still going to be able to see some of the whiter light sections that I added. I'm only going over the higher points of the frame again with that Luxe Metallic to bring back a little bit more of that shine. I then decided to add some of that bronze luxe metallic to a makeup sponge, and I'm going to go around the edges and I'm going to dab on that beautiful bronze luxe metallic. I'm going around the edges of the book pages, the edges of the book itself. This is just going to give it a hint of shine around the border. Obviously, it's also going to tie in the outside of the book with the bronze that we've incorporated in the center. And then I did then decide to add some more of that bronze to the book pages themselves, but I'm mainly adding them just on the edges there that you see, and I'll add them on the bottom and top sections as well, but not super dark, just a hint of that bronze. I then took out my Oyster Pearl Luxe Metallic and I'm going to be adding that over the top of the ballet slipper sections, the roses. I'm not going too heavy. I just want to add a little bit of that white shine, a little bit of that highlight over the top of the florals. And I'm also going to be adding it to the sections that we have draped down the sides, just to highlight those a little bit, and also on the scroll details in the corner of the pages. Finally, I'm going to be using this red velvet ribbon as a page keeper for the center there. I'm going to trim it to the size that I want, and then I'm going to use my hot glue to glue that in place. And then once I have that secured down, I'm going to use my scissors to cut off the excess up the top. And here's our finished French Country Fairytale book. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. This whole project was inspired by the beautiful Roycycled decoupage papers there, and it was so fun to create something a little bit more whimsical. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.